more.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, joining you this evening from beautiful, lovely Cleveland, Ohio. Spring is in the air. We had some thunderstorms yesterday. It was very, very nice, and I'm enjoying the weather. Welcome to another instance of our All Books Ranked stream. That's right, the shelves behind me are pretty empty because all of the books that I own are being distributed onto the floor so that we can go through them one at a time with you and just give you my thoughts on them. Maybe there's a game system there that you've never heard of, or even maybe you've heard of it, but you don't know anything about it. So this is an opportunity for us to give some of my thoughts on some of my gaming collection and kind of give it a quick rating and then sort of move on to the next one. So a couple of things, though, for tonight. Special giveaway, courtesy of our friend, our patron, our mod, Mr. Damian Williams, pawn no longer from our Patreon, has graciously put up a Kingmaker video game download code for the complete game as a prize for tonight. So if you're interested in winning, I think it's a Steam download key. So if you're interested in winning a copy of the Kingmaker Pathfinder video game, then what you need to do is check the description below of this video. And if you do that, you will find a link to our bingo card. And once you get yourself a bingo card, you're going to be able to follow along and play. So hopefully that is the case, that the description is in there. But yeah, the way the bingo works is as you as you play, the card will fill up as we go through more and more books, and then the first person to get a bingo will win. So that works for me. I don't know how many people we're going to get tonight. Last time we had about 40 or 50. It was actually kind of surprising. It kind of built up. So I'm going to give it about maybe like 4 minutes before we can get into it. And we'll do some say hellos and everything like that. Ranking for the rules of bingo. Rules of bingo are, I don't know, C tier, S tier, I don't know, C tier, B tier. Let me know if anybody has any problems with, B tier. Let me know if anybody has any problems with the card. By the way, you just need a bingo. So, up, down, diagonal, first person who gets it. So, that's the way we're going to do it. Let's see. Damian Williams coming in with a $5 super chat. Can I get some deep dive detail on how you're wrong about Mutants Masterminds 2 being better than 3 when you get to one of them? Yeah, absolutely. And I will explain in great detail, or at least in somewhat exacting detail, why it is that I know that is the case, Damian. I'm happy to do that. Thank you for the super chat. By the way, we have 2 stream goals tonight. One is our C&T stream goal, which did not get reached last time. And so that means it creeps up a little bit because, we got to keep it interesting to do another C&T release. But also below that, for our tip goal for the evening, if we can reach $125 in Stream Elements tips, I will do a Sunday evening system deep dive, one of our super secret system Sunday streams. I'll do that Easter Sunday in the evening, and we'll figure out with the patrons on a system that we really want to do a deep dive into, and we'll spend 3.5 hours really going into the nitty gritty of the mechanics and how the game works as sort of a bonus stream. So those are our goals for tonight. Bonus stream on Sunday and a C&T video. So let's see. Is anybody else having problems with the bingo cards? So if you go down into the description of the video, you will see that there is a link. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Apparently you can't click on the link. Apparently you have to copy and paste it. Is that what I'm being told? Okay. Yeah, so in the description below, there's a link, which apparently YouTube is fucking up. And, oh, this did happen last time. Okay, well, unfortunately, I don't think there's anything we can really do about that. But, wonder why YouTube does that. All right, well, you got to copy and paste it. So, can I post the link in chat? Yeah, I can post the link in chat. There's the link in chat. Oh, look, yeah, YouTube did it again. See how it made it only partially a link? That's crazy. Yeah, that's weird. Apparently, you need to have a Bitly. You need to have a Bitly account now in order to use Bitly. Well, that's stupid. Anyways, everyone just type it in manually. Derek, just read it off to us. Yeah, so this should just be one link, but for some odd reason, it is not. You know, I don't know. Don't know what to tell you. Sorry. Looks like we've got some people in there, though. All right. So yeah, go ahead and play along with our bingo game if you'd like to. Free space in the middle, and of course, if you know, if a game now the key is if a game gets brought up, you have to kind of remember, or at least we'll ask you back for it, which box it was used to fill. So you can only use a game to fill one box. So even if it meets multiple criteria, you can only use that game for one box, okay? Just to make it, you know, extremely more complicated. But, you know, we gotta add some level of difficulty. Otherwise, people might get bingo way too early. So we'll make it a little bit interesting. Okay. I'm not saying you have to take notes, but, you know, listen, at the very least, you should be somewhat aware of what we got. All right. So we're going to start off. By the way, real quick, before I actually get started, two things. One, I changed the timer from 1 minute to 2 minutes. We were kind of taking 2 minutes anyways. Secondly, my good friend, George Palco, who I play D&D with in my Friday night games, is on the Discord as Obvious, as a hero tier patron, did the heroic action of going through and actually chapterizing our entire first stream. So if you go back to our first book stream, it now has chapter links for all of the games we talked about. And I added a pinned comment, which Obvious also provided, with links to go find every game that we talked about. And if it is available on DriveThruRPG as a PDF, then it is our Knights of Last Call affiliate link. So again, I'm super thankful for that. Awesome. Thank you, George, for doing that. So hopefully that makes these videos a little bit more useful, and that you can have this sort of quick note list of here's every game we talked about, and here's the short description of, you know, here's where you can go find it in the chapter notes. So hopefully that's something that, you know, we can keep doing for the rest of these episodes. Certainly, if George is willing to do that, I'll let him do it. But otherwise, I'll probably step up and do it, because I do think it is really awesome. And I know that several of the patrons expressed an idea of how do we make this a little bit more sensible? How do we make this a little bit more usable going forward? So I think this is probably one of the best ways to do it, without just saying, okay, today we're only going to talk about D20 games, which I think could get pretty boring and the like. So yeah, again, thank you for everybody for joining me. We're going to get into it here. And remember, super chat and tip goals. And of course, if you do tip and you want some more extra information on a game that we're talking about or we just talked about, I will queue up the bonus timer, and we'll spend a couple extra 3 or 4 or 5 minutes talking about that game. All right, let's get into it. Now, as an example, you could either use this as Forgotten Realms, or you could use this as D&D 4th edition, but you can't use it for both D&D and 4th edition and Forgotten Realms. So, you know, be smart about it. Again, link to the bingo card is in the description to the video. You do have to apparently copy and paste it. You can't just click on it because YouTube thinks the hashtag is you're trying to be cool and link to something on Twitter or something like that. I don't know. Okay, so we have Forgotten Realms take on, or I'm sorry, 4th edition D&D's take on the Forgotten Realms. Here's the problem. It looks like Faerun. It kind of smells like Faerun. But in order to make Forgotten Realms fit the logic of 4th edition D&D, which included things like tieflings and dragonborn, which were part of the core races of D&D 4th edition, which were not really a part of Forgotten Realms, as well as to make sense for why, like, wizards weren't like wizards anymore, because, you know, in 4th edition D&D, they kind of got rid of spells and they instead made them powers. They created something for this campaign setting called the Spell Plague, which also made its way into the Forgotten Realms novels at the time, which was a horrible, kludgy, painful way of trying to shoehorn the Forgotten Realms into 4th edition. So that being said, it's a lovely book. It's a very much a 4th edition book. It has a beautiful design layout, beautiful aesthetic. It talks about the magic of the Forgotten Realms, the cosmology, the pantheon, and then the vast majority of the book, I would say close to 150 pages, is dedicated to these sort of 2 or 3 spreads. And I'm going to go back to this in a second, though. These 2 or 3 page spreads about each of the areas. Here's some information about the gods and the goddesses of Forgotten Realms. And this is Chesenta, which is a nation. It talks about the lore. It talks about some interesting settlements and features. And boom. Then another 2-page spread on Chult, which is sort of the jungle southern area. 2-page spread on Cormyr. Oh, Cormyr gets 4 pages. One of the things that was really nice about it is everything basically is on this sort of like 2 or 4 page. Maybe the Dalelands gets several pages because the Dalelands are such an important part. You know, Damar, like it's pretty well set up the way that they have this sort of, you know, every new section, it starts up here in the upper left-hand corner. So it's a really cool book. And I want to bring out, you know, it's a 4th edition book. So it's very usable. They've got encounters in here. They have, you know, traps and various magical items that are already sort of built into the game. So it's really cool how they try to like make it a very, very gamingly useful thing. Now, that being said, I thought Forgotten Realms in the 4th edition, mainly like the Spell Plague and the changes that it made to the campaign world, were really bad. And I did not like them at all. And the 3rd edition Forgotten Realms book is a fantastic book. So I'm going to have to give this a D, unfortunately, because while it is pretty, not enough, it was kind of really stupid and changed. The Spell Plague was dumb. End of story. KC says, sup. Hey, what's up? Related question, do settings require changes when the mechanics change, or is it better to pretend it's always been like that? You know, Frostjack, I can't answer that for sure, but it's certainly the case that Forgotten Realms has done this. I don't know what they did for 5th edition. I think they kind of just pretended that the Spell Plague never happened. But I do know that even when Forgotten Realms went from 1st edition to 2nd edition D&D, they introduced something in the kind of collective storyline called the Time of Troubles that sort of explained why things were changing. They didn't do that from 2nd edition to 3rd edition, though. But then they did do that from 3rd edition to 4th edition. And then with 4th edition to 5th edition, I think they completely ignored it entirely. So I personally don't think so, but yeah. Oh, listen. Yeah, I mean, the Forgotten Realms book itself is nice, but ultimately, I hate the Spell Plague and I hate what it did to the realms. And okay, Awesome is saying that the Spell Plague is officially in the lore of 5th edition. Okay, I just thought the Spell Plague was stupid, and it's like, how many times can Mystra die? Like it just really got old, and I didn't like it. All right, our next. So, Sam, the Sword Mage was not in the Forgotten Realms campaign guide. Sam, it was in the Forgotten Realms player's guide, which is a better book, Sam. So, just between me and you. Okay, so this is Kingdom. Now, this is a game by Ben Robbins, who made Microscope. Kingdom, however, is a much more focused game. Again, it's pamphlet-sized, and it's only about 160 pages. The purpose of Kingdom is sort of a guided role-playing experience. And again, he calls it a role-playing game about communities. In Kingdom, and the game provides you with a couple different seeds, like sci-fi, fantasy. The idea of Kingdom is you and your group of players are going to sit around and you kind of make characters, but they don't really have stats. And what you decide to do is you go through and you pretend like there is a kingdom. Could be anything. It could be a starship. It could be a nation. It could be a desert island of survivors from a plane crash. It's any sort of community. And the idea is, as a group, you kind of decide who are the different factions within our community and what is the challenge that is facing them. And each player will go around and sort of decide what actions the community is taking in order to sort of deal with this crisis. And if they can make time and progress against it, you mark progress. And if the time passes, then you can potentially start to lose. And so you use it's kind of like microscope, added to another level. Like you can see here, like you might come to a crisis where it's like, should we hang Silas Jenkins? Maybe you're in an Old West community here. Yes or no. And everybody kind of like role plays as different members of this community. And they all sort of like add in their own kind of thoughts and, opinions. And they try to, it's role playing in like the strictest sense, where you are just really focused on being, portraying that role. And to that end, the last thing I want to say about this is each player at the table will either have the role of power, perspective, or touchstone. And the people with the power role actually get to make all of the decisions. Now that can change throughout the course of the game. The people with the perspective power, they get to decide what are the consequences of those decisions. They don't get to make the decisions, but they do get to decide what are the consequences. And the touchstones are the people who are like in touch with they represent sort of the spirit or the soul of the community. And they get to decide how everybody feels about what is happening in the community. Even though they don't have any power, they ultimately have sort of the will of the masses, if you will, and can decide whether or not they thought it was a good idea or a bad idea. Ben. Yeah, Microscope is a very rigid game because I think it's designed to be that way because I think it wants that rigidness, Ben, to push you into like, there's a classic problem when you play Microscope of people trying to get group consensus. Oh, you can't hear the message. Okay, sorry. I'm going to read it. No, I just had my audio off. Ben said, what I don't like about the Microscope line, meaning Kingdom, Follow, or whatever, is that the game tells you cannot change or ignore rules. It's not flexible at all, and not really an RPG in my opinion, or at least not a good one. And I kind of see where you're going with that, because again, the game is really trying to force you to make certain decisions. It's procedural in the way that John Harper is, because the game designer, maybe even Luke Crane, the game designer thinks that they know better than to allow groupthink and, group, say, to sort of override the idea. Microscope is deliberately very locked in because they don't want you to just start, consensus seeking and consensus building. In fact, part of the whole point of Microscope is to avoid consensus building. If you don't like someone else's decision, you can represent that by taking, whatever it's called, disharmony or whatever, one of the tokens, to basically say, I'm a little pissed off about what happened. And so like other games can do the same thing as well. So A Quiet Year does the same thing. So I like Kingdom. It is an interesting experience. It's a fun sort of creative activity. I don't know that I call it a role-playing game because, again, when I think of a role-playing game, role-playing game is a bad term because, to be fair, this is more of a role-playing game by strict definition of what role-playing game means than anything else behind me. but it's not the way that anybody uses the term role-playing game or means role-playing game. So I think it's a bad terminology. But I like Kingdom. I am going to give Kingdom a B. I think Kingdom is good. All right, I'm going to do a trio of books here. Speaking of Luke Crane. So this is the original set of Burning Wheel. So this is the rule book, the character burner, and the adventure burner. And of course it's Burning Wheel, so they've got to be called burners and make it really edgy. I don't have them in right order. There we go. So this is the original Burning Wheel before what is known as Burning Wheel Gold, when the game was sort of divided amongst these different books. But a lot of the same things about Burning Wheel hold true. Burning Wheel is a game ultimately about your characters' beliefs and how those beliefs are shaped through their actions. Burning Wheel is a fairly complex game, and looking at the art style of this game and looking at the framework, you can see how this game influenced Torchbearer and Mouseguard, and yes, even Burning Wheel Gold. Now, Burning Wheel Gold, I will admit, is probably as good as Burning Wheel can be. A little bit more better. It's better put together. A lot of the systems are more integrated, and this initial edition was a little kludgy at times. I myself had a very hard time. Burning Wheel Gold, I could see myself playing. Burning Wheel, the original one, I don't know that I could. Burning Wheel has a series and systems of gameplay in which the actions that your character takes influence how stronger you get in those skills. Your role playing at the table and the way you portray your character and their beliefs give you all sorts of currency points that you can use to be more effective and have more of a shape around the continuing and evolving narrative. And like most Luke Crane books, it's a fairly procedural game with a lot of, elements to it that, quite frankly, Luke Crane would say, don't change my game. So, that the rules, they're meant to be followed. There's not a lot of that wishy-washy, this is your game, do whatever you'd like. No, Luke Crane's like, this is my game, don't fuck it up. Burning Wheel. The original, I'm gonna have to give a C+, C2. It is kind of dense, and it's kind of hard to make sense of everything, and the rules, the editing wasn't that great, and I remember having a hard time reading this book and really understanding what was going on in it. Sorry, Luke. All right, what's next? Ooh. We got a big boy. This is a box set, so I guess it counts as a box set, but it also counts as, I guess, as a non-D20 fantasy. You'll have to decide which you want to use on your bingo. This is Warhammer Fantasy RPG. Here we go. This is Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing Game RPG 3rd edition from Fantasy Flight Games. Now, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay has been around for a long time, and obviously it was produced by, tied to the Games Workshop. And Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing Game always was a D100 system, similar in many ways to, Call of Cthulhu and basic fantasy role-playing. It was a D100 system. You had jobs that your character could learn, and you would pick up additional skills, so it was a percentage system. And there was a 1st edition, a 2nd edition. It was known for being kind of grimdark, kind of, cynical, but funny. Fantasy Flight Games got a hold of it, and they bought the IP for 3rd edition. And when they did 3rd edition, they Fantasy Flight Games the shit out of this game system. These dice are known as, nowadays we would call these Genesis dice. This was the original game that spawned the Genesis system, which is used in the Star Wars, various Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars systems. The game came with all sorts of little goodies. It came with, you know, cards for all of your powers. Okay. Like, it was like a very, very evocative game with just a ton of doodads. You had these cool, like, you know, here was your character sheets, and you had party cards that you could track. You know, was your party servants of justice? Were they intrepid explorers? Were they gangs of thugs? And like, you had these different things that tracked kind of power-ups for your party. The way this dice system works is, again, similar to Genesis. It is Genesis. There are basically, your character is going to roll a certain number of dice depending on how skilled they are. The GM is going to add some of these purple dice depending on how difficult the challenge is. And then you're going to add a bunch of these other green and red dice, depending on how skilled your character is. The white dice are boons, advantages. The black dice are banes, disadvantages. And I'll be damned if I can remember what the yellow dice are. I think these are item dice that like represent how good your item is. And basically, once you've built this massive pool of dice, you take the whole thing, you shake it up, you roll it, and then you get to play the interpret what the fuck all this means. And there's about 100 different symbols, and some of them give you bonuses, some of them give you penalties, some of them give you successes, some of them give you adjacent successes. It's very similar to the Legend of the Five Rings system because it was also made by Fantasy Flight Games, but they kind of refined it by the time they got to Fantasy Flight Games, or by the time they got to Legend of the Five Rings. Here's the deal. I really like this concept of this game. And I don't mind dice pools, and I don't mind all the little weird stuff, but there's a little bit too many symbols. This game is a little bit too board gamey for me, even. It is. It really is. I had fun with it, and we never, oh, sorry. And this was kind of like a beta, right, of what they were doing with the system. And obviously, Fantasy Flight Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition went back to the D100 system. So
Anonymous tipped $50.
Hey!
Hi Derek, this is Aaron's dying wife. Cough cough. I don't have long left, so if you can, please go over more for ebooks and run a 4E game for the children. Think of the children. Cough cough. Go WHF is pretty legit MGL.
Well, apparently Aaron's wife is in the chat begging for some more 4th edition stuff. And saying apparently with her dying breath that we should run a 4th edition campaign at home. That being said, I thought the box set was chock full of good stuff. It was an interesting idea. I just don't know how well it was, completely executed. Let me see here. We've got some characters here. I don't know. Anyways, I thought it was a fun game system. It just didn't play out perfectly, and it was kind of awkward. I am going to give Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing like a C-. Again, I thought it was a really cool idea, but the execution was a little clumsy, and is a little bit too many dice, and, I think, C- is probably where we're going to end up on that one. It is fun, though. I like interpreting dice pools. I think interpreting dice pools is very fun. I actually enjoy that a lot. So, I thought it seemed fine. Again, very, very, very gamey in that respect. Well, since Aaron's dying wife generated a tip, we will do a couple 4th edition books here over the next couple minutes. So we're going to start off here with Dungeon Delve. Fantastic book. Hardbound. It's part of their Orange Dungeon series. This book, Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, had 30 levels, right? Unlike normal D20, which only goes up to level 20, Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition went up to 30th level. This book contains 30 adventures that are designed to be played in a single session, aka a delve. They have some notes here about how you can customize the delves to your likings. Here is an index of new monsters, and then boom, we get into it. Here is the level 1 dungeon delve. Now, we talked about this last stream. They loved their dungeon tiles, so they try to map out all of the dungeons and dungeon tiles. Now, let's not beat around the bush here, people. These are linear as fuck dungeons, okay? They're basically 3 to 4 linked encounters, kind of, sort of, in a row. Most of them are combat, and, you know, there might be 1 or 2 skill challenges per, per delve. But in a delve, you get a map of the area, and then you get a series of encounters. Like here is for the level 1. Here is the here we'll go to the bonus because Aaron's wife did tip. We can see here. Here are the creatures. Here are all the creature stat blocks that you need for this encounter. Here is a tactical map of the encounter. The M's represent minions, kobold minions. The S's represent kobold slingers, which is an artillery. The little triangles represent difficult terrain. You can see there's some stairs there as well as some fences, right? So this is an entire encounter, and then they have tactics for what the kobolds should be doing during the course of the combat. And then here's information about the area, about the stairs, the rubble, the pit, the shaft, etc. So that's encounter number 1. Here is encounter number 2. It's a little bit more complicated. We have 3 different monsters here. Kobold skirmishers, which are a skirmisher. Kobold dragon shields, which are a soldier. And then a kobold worm priest, who is a controller, an artillery. So kind of a blaster caster. And again, a tactical map showing where they start, along with, different terrain, cover, areas of interest, and features of the area. And boom. Finally, the third encounter, the audience chamber, and yes, it ends with a white dragon wormling that the kobolds have. And that's it. That's the first encounter, or that's the first delve. So you get one of those at level 1, and then they just do that again 29 more times. Here's level 2, or here's one for level 2 characters. Here's one for level 3 characters. Oh, the Orc Stronghold. Here's one for level 4, the Raiders Hideout. And then if we go all the way up, into the teens, it's like, okay, here we go. Here's one for level 19 characters. Temple of the Four Winds. And now we are fighting, Death Knights, Sword Wraiths, and Slaughter Wights. And then, again, continue to keep going up. We can go all the way to the very end of the game. And we get level 30. The Deific Heart of Magma. And in the first fight, we fight Primordial Nagas and Earth Rage Battlebriars. Then we fight some Ifrit Karadines and Godforged Colossals. And then lastly, we fight, what a way to end your campaign, right? We fight Dal Sarnaqueen, a level 30 solo ancient red dragon. There he is. Look at that big boy. It's interesting as we kind of flip through this. Notice how big the maps get as we go through. Look how much larger this chamber is from the first beginning. When we start off with the kobold fight, it was maybe, 30 or 40 feet. And now look at this. This chamber is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. This is almost a 120 foot, maybe by 200 foot long chamber, just to fit in all of the monsters that are involved with this. By the way, the 2 Bs, those are Baelors. So you're fighting a solo red dragon, 2 Baelors, and then there are 3 greater flame skulls. And you're gonna have a fun time.
Frostjack tipped $5.
Hey, Frostjack, thank you.
Favorite adventure you own?
Favorite adventure that I own. I don't know if I have it on the shelf right now, but the answer is Forge of Fury, which they reprinted in Tales of the Yawning Portal for 5th edition, but it is a 3rd edition adventure called Forge of Fury. It's designed for characters levels 3 to 5, and I love that adventure. I've run it several times. I think it's just a beautifully designed dungeon, and it's just it hits all the right beats of what 3rd edition D&D was trying to do. It hits so many great elements about dungeon design, about non-linear dungeon design. It's pretty cool. It's a fantastic adventure. And again, they redid it for 5th edition. I can't say how well it plays out in 5th edition. But I know that in 3rd edition, it's one of my favorite. I mean, it is my favorite, but for sure. It's the one that sticks with me the most over the years. All right. We'll do another one. We'll do a 4th edition one. We'll do another one, a 4th edition one. Again, Smith's going to tip. We're going to do that. Can I use that to fill my bingo card? Nope. Nope. That does not count. All right. Here is a 3rd edition book. Actually, it's a 3.5 book that is called Book of Nine Swords. The Tome of Battle, Book of Nine Swords. Also known as one of the greatest books of all time. Oh, by the way, sorry, I didn't give a ranking. Dungeon Delve, S tier. Book of Nine Swords, S tier. And again, remember, you can't use a book for the same thing twice. This book came out towards the end of 30.5 edition, where they tried to introduce 4th edition concepts into the Dungeons and Dragons game. And they did it with this. It was very different from any D&D book that we ever saw. It has this very strong sort of Asian influence that is done very tastefully and very beautifully. This is all about martial characters. It gives us 3 new classes. The Crusader, who uses divine power. The Sword Sage. Here it is. The Sword Sage, which is sort of like, they're not a wizard. They are like basically like a pure martial artist who like uses their techniques and their discipline and their focus in order to do these crazy, miraculous, powerful martial abilities. And then the last one is the Warblade, which is sort of the pure adrenaline fighter, kind of the barbarian of the type. And the difference is, unlike previous editions of the game, this book has what looks like spells, but these are not spells. These are called martial maneuvers. And they are divided into different schools, kind of like magic spells that do different things. And they have levels just like spells. So now a martial character from this book might get like a level 9 ability, the same way that a wizard in 3rd edition would get a level 9 spell. So if we look at something like, let's take a look at, and keep in mind this was 3rd edition D&D. If we look at the Ironheart School, which is a school about, pure martial focus on a blade, and we go to their level 9 ability, which I'm trying to find here. I know what it's called, but here it is. So we have the Strike of Perfect Clarity, and this is their level 9 ability, and it's an attack that adds 100 damage to an attack, which, 3rd edition, that was a big fucking deal. This is a very cool book. It was revolutionary. The whole concept of it felt fresh. And even though 4th edition stole kind of from this book, they used it as a testing bed, it still feels unique and it still feels like it's its own thing. And I really appreciate it for that. So yeah, S tier, S plus tier. I love it. So very cool book, very different. And that's part of what made it really, really cool. Rick is here, was playing Star Wars Battlefront. Welcome, Rick. Might not be too late. You can grab a bingo card below in the description. Remember, you have to apparently you have to copy and paste it. You can't just do it. I'm looking at the people's bingo cards. Some people are getting close. All right. All right. Next, Icons. Icons is from Green Ronin, and it is produced by Steve Kenson, who made Mutants and Masterminds. This is the assembled edition of Icons, kind of like a revision, almost like a 2nd edition of Icons. But this is a superhero RPG. It's very Sentinels of the Multiverse-esque. Steve wanted to create, and I applaud him. When this came out, I liked Mutants and Masterminds better because I liked the 3rd edition approach to, abilities and superpowers, and I liked all the fastidious point accounting, very Champions-esque, very, GURPS-esque. I'm going to put 7 points into flying, and that means I can fly 500 miles per hour, and I'm going to put 3 points into protection, and that's going to give me immunities to these 5 things, right? Like this very, very, very almost simulationist approach to superheroes. I don't know if my feeling on this is that Steve Kenson was like, you know what, I'm kind of dragged down by this as well, and I think inspired by games like Fate, and maybe Powered by the Apocalypse, he created the Icons game. And while this is not a PBTA game, it does feel more like a D20 game. It's not like a narrative type game as much, but it very greatly simplified the whole process of powers and power generations. Powers just basically, it has a random it has a random hero generator in the middle of it, which is pretty cool to generate, what was your character's origins? Were they transformed? Was it your birthright? Is it a gimmick? Then you roll randomly to determine how powerful that power is. And instead of getting caught up into like the specifics of what exactly each power can do, they just have a level between 1 and 8, and you kind of use that as a guideline to see what you could do with the power. It's a lot more freeform than Mutants and Masterminds, but without like the sort of super heavy narrative traits that like a game like Masks has, or even kind of Sentinels of the Multiverse in a way. It's still pretty simulationist, but it's just way toned down on the what the power, like the level of detail, the level of crunch. So again, this is still kind of crunchy. It's crispy, but it's not like, Mutants and Masterminds, which can feel like a math lesson sometimes. I really liked Icons. I thought it was a fun game. I thought it was a fun book. I love Steve Kenson. It's a beautiful book. I like the art. I like the form factor. It's got a nice size and heft to it. I'm going to give Icons a B. It's a good book. All right. All right. Vault of the Drow is is probably one of the most classic adventures from the old original AD&D edition. Vault of the Drow, in a way, was sort of a part of the original adventure path, because you started off with adventures G1 through G3, the famous Against the Giants setting. And then it went into D1, D2, D3, where you found out that what was behind the giants were actually the Drow, and the super evil, very powerful characters. You can see an adventure for characters from levels 10 to 14. And I have read this because I bought it, obviously, secondhand from Half Price Bookstore, but I have never read it. But it's incredible to think that in the 28 pages of this booklet, some of which, by the way, are used to describe things like, Loth, the Demon Queen. Let's take a look at what this goddess has. Well, she has 66 hit points, so there's that. Yeah, GM Scott, you're absolutely right. They did have that.
Rick S. Tip $25, shipping in to support the channel.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. Appreciate that so much. Thank you so much, Rick. That is a very generous tip. Appreciate that. Appreciate the support. We are already at $90, so we are well on our way to that $125 goal of doing a bonus Sunday stream. So, thank you to everyone who has contributed. Thank you, Rick S., for that support. And thank you to everybody. I love doing these streams with you all, and I love the community. And again, thank you to our patrons for supporting us. And thank you to everyone for being here. So this is classic D&D art. You can even see here Errol Otis up here in the top, 1980. So this follows after G1, G2, G3 to D1, D2, and then this is D3. And the final one after this was Q1, which was Queen of the Demon Web Pips, where you actually go to fight Loth. But what's crazy to me is that in these 28 pages, and again, 2 of them or 3 of them are just information about brand new monsters that people did never heard of before, like Kuatoa and Drow. So there you go. 23 pages is where it ends. There's the credits. And this created so many vivid memories from people's childhood. And it's nothing, it's nothing to write home about. It's nothing crazy. But it's all that it took in order to just create these incredible stories of of characters, of people playing the game. And, you know, that's just the way. And obviously you can see here, this is all very dense. There's a lot of text in here, but it's not really about none of this is like describing things. None of this is really breaking it down, right? It's just facts and information. DM notes. Here we go. Here's the map that Ben was talking about, I believe. This is the Underdark exploration map. So, you know, very cool, classic, fantastic book. In my collection, I think I have all the original D1, D2, D3. Yeah, I think this is fantastic. It's beautiful. I love this, the slimness of it. The art is just incredible. I mean, how do you go wrong with this? I mean, A tier. I mean, this is just a beautiful book, a beautiful adventure. And again, I just respect the hell out of it for having so much history just tied into it, you know? All right. So, boom. Yeah, I miss modules like this too, Smith. I do. I mean, I think like you could pick up a module like that and read it, and it's like you'd start thinking, how do I put this in my campaign? Maybe not this campaign, maybe the next campaign. But there was that beautiful ability to just feel like this is actually something I can use and just drop into my game, and that made you feel so empowered to do your own thing. Now when, you know, Paizo releases something or D&D releases something, it's a, you know, 14 level mega adventure, and it's like completely integrated into itself. And you're like, I can't just use this. It's nice to have. It's going to sit on my shelf though, unless we specifically are playing that. Right. So yeah, I mean, in a Paizo adventure nowadays, just the bonus stories or the bonus content in an adventure, not the adventure, just the bonus content is more than 23 pages, which was the entire length of that adventure. All right. Rogue Trader. Another pickup from Half Price Bookstores, although not that cheap. It was $30, half off. So this is part of the Warhammer. Fantasy Flight Games bought the license to produce Warhammer games. And with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplaying, they decided to make some crazy game with a shitload of dice. In this game, they decided to keep with the D100 system. And they ended up making a whole series of this. One of them is about rogue traders, which is kind of like Dune Guild Leaders meets Firefly. I don't know how else to describe it. But they also did one for Space Marines, for the Inquisition. They did one for I think the Imperial Guard. There's a whole line of these for the Warhammer 40K roleplay series. But Rogue Trader, I think, was the first, I think. It's a gorgeous book. The art is evocative. The layout is sublime. I love the 40K art. It's absolutely gorgeous. It takes you sort of through the history. In fact, interestingly, 40K was known as Rogue Trader before even the thing was. Does this count as sci-fi? Yes, this is definitely sci-fi. But this follows the classic D100 system that the Warhammer games had always created. You randomly generate your characteristics, which I think is really cool. Then you go through what's called your origin path. And I thought this was such a cool system. I've tried to steal and hack this a million times. So I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but like what it is you start off with what world was your character from? Were they from a home world? Were they from a death world? Were they born in Voidborn? Were they born in space? Did they come from a forge world or a hive world? Did they come from a noble? Were they nobly born? Then you figure out what your character's birthright was. And the idea was, if you were born on a death world, you were more likely going to be a scavenger or a scapegrace or a stubjack. It was very unlikely that you were going to be a savant or a vaunted. Similarly, if you were noble born or born on an imperial world, you were unlikely to be a scavenger or a scapegrace. And so you kind of ended up writing path, drawing lines down. You would choose your world, your birthright, what brought you out into adventure, what trials and tribulations have you gone through, what is your motivation to adventure, and then lastly, what class or career do you have? And the idea was that you would copy this and you would use different colored pencils, one for each player, and you would kind of see where their life paths crossed over one another. And that would be like a cool moment where you would say, okay, you guys were both, Smith's line and Ben's line both went through criminal. Let's create a moment. Let's go back. Maybe that's how you guys, maybe you worked together once when you were part of a criminal enterprise that used to operate out of maybe you're part of a, hive gangs as part of a hive world, and you kind of operated on that before you guys got off world, right? So it's like, that's what makes, I think, this system so beautiful and cool. Plus, I love the job system. You use experience points to buy talents and skills, and then you can eventually level out of your job and go into a new job, and then you can acquire new abilities by buying them with experience points. There's a lot of skills in this game. There's a lot of equipment. There's all sorts of 40K cybernetics and bolt pistols and plasma guns and melt weapons. And then there's a section on psychic powers. And of course, all this beautiful, beautiful art. John Blanche, just gorgeous. It's a complete game. It's really cool. If you like 40K, I mean, how could you not like this? I thought it was designed well. It's integrated well. I think there's ideas here that I love to steal to other games. Rogue Trader gets an A from me. I think it's a great example of the game. I have not read all of the rest of these books in this series, but I do think it's very beautiful. At least this one is. I got to imagine like the Space Marine one has to be fucking nuts in like an awesome way, right? All right. Here we have a Monty cookbook from his Malhavik Press after he left Wizards of the Coast. He made his own company. The Book of Eldritch Might, I want to say, was his very first book that he produced. I might be right about this. This was a splat book, for lack of a better term. It only was 45 pages long. It had some new feats, and it had a couple of prestige classes. Honestly, we played 3rd edition D&D for close to 8 or 9 years. 8 years. I don't think, and we had many campaigns, we're like a lot of people. Not all of our campaigns lasted 5 years, right? A lot of our campaigns started and ended within, a few months, sometimes even a few weeks. But we had many characters over a long period of time. And I want to say that we never really ever used prestige classes ever. I didn't like them. My players didn't like them. No one cared about them. I quite frankly was uninterested in them. So I don't care about these prestige classes. Also, the one is about a mirror master who uses mirrors to do stuff. I don't really care. And then here's some more pointless splat with a bunch of different spells. And then there's some magic items in the back of the book that also I don't care about, and quite frankly also look a little weird. Here's a magical Vile. Here's your Boule Walker. Okay, that's cool. Look at that. Oh, that's a very cool looking sword thing there. I don't know what's going on with that. Book of Eldritch Might. It's a 3rd edition splat book. People made a billion of these, full of just feats and, shit. I like Monty Cook a lot, but it is what it is. This is like a poster child for the problems with 3rd edition. D. It's not an F, but it's a D. I mean, I like to think that Monty Cook, knew what he was doing, right? So. Oh, speaking of classic adventures, boom. Damian Williams with a $1.99 super chat says, only used prestige classes in Saga edition. You mean for Star Wars? I honestly could see myself doing that more in a game where there's like an IP, I think that would be more appropriate. Frostjack. The last one does count as 3rd edition. No, the last one doesn't count as 3rd edition because it's actually Malhavik. Okay, it's not. It does not count as 3rd edition. But Frostjack has bingos. I mean, it is for 3rd edition, but it's not like a 3rd edition official book. It's technically an imprint, so it is a D20 book, I would say. It's not a 3rd edition book, if that makes any sense. But Frostjack is saying that they have bingo. Frostjack, are you C1B 63D? I believe he is. If so, I think he's got it. All right, yeah, so Frostjack picks it up with D&D 4E, Luke Crane RPG. We had Burning Wheel. We had a box set in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplaying. We did a Forgotten Realms book and Any Adventure. So there we go, buddy. You got it. You did it. Good job. Sunless Citadel is Frostjack. What you're going to be winning is a code to download your own copy of Pathfinder from Steam. From Kingmaker, courtesy of Mr. Damian Williams, who is providing it to the channel for us to give away. So thank you to him for that. Yeah, awesome. Congrats. So good stuff. Thank you, everybody, for playing bingo. And that's it. We'll see you next time. Second place bingo because apparently I was late. So thank you, Damian, for that. Congrats to Frostjack. But yeah, prestige classes in something like Saga Edition Star Wars, I think make a lot more sense. And like when you have an IP or like a very powerful brand, because you may want to tie into that more than a generic class is capable of doing. So, all right, let's talk about Sunless Citadel by Bruce Cordell, one of my favorite game designers, especially his work on Psionics. No, I had to find it for a second. Okay. Sunless Citadel was the first adventure that was published for 3rd edition as sort of an official adventure. It is a classic. It is linear as shit. This is actually a classic example of a dungeon that is used to describe, I think Justin Alexander did this on his blog, about how this dungeon looks like there's like a million different ways you can go, but it's actually very cleverly designed that it follows a fairly strict linear path. In fact, all this stuff here ends up leading into this northern section, but it only joins through 2 areas. One here, which is a trapped hallway between the Kobold Hall and the Goblin section. And then the other one here over by the Rat Den comes through here. And this is where the Goblins have built a series of walls and fortification. And then you enter into the Goblin area. Then you go down to the lower level. And at the lower level, all roads lead to the tree, the Golthias tree, and where you fight the druid. That being said, I'm criticizing this, but it is a classic adventure. It's got a dragon. It's got kobolds. It's got hobgoblins. It's got goblins. You fight a cool druid. There's weird, scary monsters. It has all of the classic elements of D&D. And more importantly, it's just a beautiful, awesome site-based adventure. It's not really about being super heroic. You know, there's a couple different character hooks, but look, you know, this is I'm going to highlight something that Aaron talks a lot. Smith talks a lot about. I don't know why, but it says "fuck you" right there. Good on me. Look at these character hooks. Okay, you know, you could be contracted by somebody. You might be trying to solve a mystery, but look at the first one. Simple adventuring. You are eager to make a name for yourself. The legend of the Sunless Citadel is well known locally, and stories indicate that it is a perfect site for heroes intent on discovery, glory, and treasure. So this really exemplifies what 3rd edition was trying to do. 3rd edition, I think, in many ways, was trying to get back to that sort of, you know, classic style, maybe getting away from some of the Dragonlance type stuff where it was these epic arc adventures and everything was pre-written. It's a classic adventure. I think it's fantastic. You know, I mean, look, I mean, wandering monster tables, like it is a beautiful example of game. And they did reprint it in Tales of Yawning Portal. And fun note, not this version, but the 5th edition module of this module is the first time how Knights of Last Call started. Bob wanted to run D&D for his brother when he got home out of the military. And he said, Derek, you're a really good DM. Can you show me how to dungeon master? So I tried trying to teach him, and he said, maybe it would be better if you showed me. And so our first thing that we did is we ran 5th edition D&D using the Sunless Citadel adventure from Tales of Yawning Portal, which I heavily modified. But when we were finished with that, Bob was like, that's fun. Let's keep doing it. And I said, okay, well, Pathfinder 2 is out, and I'd really like to do that instead of 5th edition. And he said, that sounds great too. And that's what we did. And that's how Knights of the Last Call, started up. So Sunless Citadel, I'd love to give it an S tier. It is not. That's just kind of nostalgia. It is not the best designed dungeon in the world, but it is a lot of fun. I'm going to give this a B+++. It's not an A, but it's a very, 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 very high B, and it is a lot of fun, and 99% of groups would never probably even notice, and I think they'd have a lot of fun with it too. And there's no plot. It's just a cool place for you to go and explore and learn stuff and, kill monsters and get treasure. I think it's really cool. All right. Free Leagues, The One Ring, 2nd edition. So The One Ring was originally produced, I think, by Cubicle 7. They lost the license, and then they produced, Free League got it. The book is beautiful. I love the paper. The cover has this nice grainy tooth to it. I love it. I have not read this book cover to cover, so I'm not going to pretend that I haven't, or that I have. There's a lot going on in this book. I cannot say what this book is. Part of me feels like it is a simulationist game. They've got this whole series where this is like when you go on a journey, you're supposed to track it and do all these different, roles, and it's kind of procedural, right? You start on the map, you choose who's going to be the guide, who's going to be the hunter, who's going to be the lookout. You set your path, then you roll for the marching tests, and then if you travel, if it was successful, it's very procedural. But nothing about it really jumped out and grabbed me and said, like, this is really, really cool. And it's like, yeah, I just, maybe I have to give it a chance. I haven't played it. It hasn't been at my table. So again, I'm giving this to you as sort of my initial once through, not real deep dive, just looking at it. It's a C. It seems like there's some cool ideas and for the councils, like the Council of Elrond, for the traveling, but some of it seems a little bit clunky or so it's not the best. C. All right, next up. By the way, it's 8 o'clock, so we're going to be going until 9 o'clock tonight. I want to say thank you to everybody. I'm going to take a little halfway break here. Thanks to our patrons for supporting this channel. Thank you to everybody here for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you for Damien for providing the cool prize. But most importantly, thank you to everybody who in some way, shape, or form, whether it's by running a game or donating or tipping, has led to the success of this game. We're just having a grand old time with this channel, and we're really excited about the studio about to be finished. So I just want to say thank you to all the support. And if you're interested in being a part of the Knights of the Last Call community, check out our link below to the Patreon. All right. Next up is an all-time great. It is the original AD&D 1st edition Dungeon Master's Guide. So this is a S+++++++++ book. I mean, this is the Dungeon Master Guide that all Dungeon Master Guides are weighed against. It is a gorgeous, beautiful tome released in 1979, penned by the great Gary Gygax. I actually have 2 copies of this. I have one which is the orange spine, which is pretty beat up. And then I managed to pick this up at a swap or something like that. Maybe at like Origins or Gen Con, but I picked this up from a used dealer, many years ago still, but at the time, this book has advice that it's like the Bible. It's not really spelled out entirely, and there's probably many different ways that you could interpret some of what Gary Gygax is saying here, that to defend or to attack someone's position. But this is a fascinating look into the way that the game was portrayed at this time. It is loaded with random tables for NPCs and for treasure, and of course for dungeons. Yes, this has a random dungeon generator in it that you can use in order to create a random dungeon. It has monster statistics in the back, all sorts of random encounter tables, just encounter table after encounter table, magical items, swords, rods, staffs, wands. It is just chock full of everything that you could ever imagine. And of course, very famously, your random dungeon generator. I have used this maybe more times than any other random set of tables in the entire history of the game. I think it is a fantastic and beautiful book. And it's not edited particularly well, but I mean, it's the GOAT. It's the GOAT of all time. And yeah, your vocabulary will definitely pick up if you're reading this book, because you learn a lot of weird words. And okay, anybody who's on our Patreon knows this. If you notice when I type or in chat, I use a lot, especially for like someone who, lives in the modern age of 2023. I use a ton of IE, EG, CF. I use a bunch of these little idioms, these little contractions to carry over into regular parts of speech. And I do that, I think, because I read so much Gary Gygax growing up. And I really do. I really think my use of all of those little contractions, parts of speech, is from this. Anyways, fantastic, beautiful book, City of Brass cover art. Just fantastic. It's gorgeous, beautiful. All right. All right, we'll do another 4th edition book. It's The Plane Below. So they did 4th edition sort of redesign the cosmology of what we traditionally think of with D&D. And I think they went back to it for the 5th edition. Ben, take care. And Ben, I will message you later. And you let me know. If you're tired, buddy, we can always do it this weekend too. So just let me know. So The Plane Below is a book about the elemental chaos. And again, 4th edition sort of redid the cosmology. It got rid of the Great Wheel, which I love Planescape. I do love Planescape. I prefer 4th edition's cosmology to the Great Wheel. I just do. It makes more sense to me. I like dividing the world between the deities, and I like and having the sort of, because even an evil deity is built in a form of structure, right? Because it's built on a modicum of faith, a doctrine of faith. So 4E D&D just makes more sense. And I love the idea of the elemental chaos. I think that is like a cool place to go adventuring. In 3rd edition, you had things like the plane of ooze, and the plane of mud, and the plane of salt, and the plane of lightning, and the plane of air. And like, if you read the descriptions for it, it would be like, this is an endless plane, infinite in all 3 dimensions of air. There is nothing here. There's a plane of vacuum, for God's sakes. As if an entire plane of air wasn't boring enough, there was a plane of fucking vacuum. What the fuck is that? That's horrible. It was literally nothing. 4th edition said, you know what, people do actually need to play this game. And they created a really cool adventure or a really cool source book that would help your characters become sort of elemental chaos masters. It had cool information about the monsters that live there, the kind of adventures that you might go on. And again, like so many 4th edition books, it just was filled up with just example encounters for you to beg, borrow, or steal. Like, it's just a fantastic book.
GM Rufus tipped $50.
Hey, GM Rufus with $50 chat. Didn't throw anything in the description. So GM Rufus, let us know if you're in the chat, if there's any special shout out message that you'd like to get. But thank you for that tip. That's going to put us over our $125 goal. And that means we will be on Sunday doing our Super Sunday Secret Super Sunday Super Secret System stream. Holiday special edition. And thank you very much for that, GM Rufus. Happy to do that. And thanks for your support on that behalf. Yeah, Elemental Cast, it's just so cool. It's fantastic. And John is asking, and the plane above was pretty much 4E Spelljammer. Yeah, pretty much. The 4E planes above was sort of the astral plane, the domains of the gods. You could sail between the different domains of the gods, because in 4th edition, each of the domains of a deity was almost like its own spherical realm, planet, kind of thing floating out in the astral sea. I just think it made a lot more sense. It was a lot cooler. I love this book. I think it's fantastic. It's well done. I am going to go ahead and give Planes Below a B+. It's very solid. I mean, it's not like it's its own game, but it's a cool, evocative setting. Probably not the most useful for lower level campaigns. And let's face it, a lot of campaigns are lower level and end before you even get to higher level. But if you have a D&D campaign and set in 4th edition, and you start off in the heroic tier with, you know, problems related to like elemental evil or elemental chaos, and then kind of the campaign as you go into Paragon, and you start prepping to go into Epic. So like late Paragon into Epic, like this is like the perfect book if you want to sort of launch into true sort of planar adventures, which I think would be fantastic and so much fun. And 4E definitely supports that kind of gameplay. It's really big into like the kind of superhero D&D once you're up into the epic tier. I mean, that's really what the epic tier is all about. It doesn't shy away from it. Let's do this bad boy, this big chonka. That's right. This is the $150 thick ass book. It is the Slumbering Tsar Saga. This book, which this was produced for Pathfinder 1st edition. Hey, GM Rufus showing his love and support, by the way. Just keep doing what you're doing. This is my favorite gaming channel. GM Rufus, thank you so much for your support. It's because of patrons and generous contributions from donators like you that we're able to do this channel. You know, if you're a fan of this show, that we do not get the views that other channels get because of our content, because of our approach to gaming. It's not always the most popular, but I think it's valuable. I think it's educational. I think it's entertaining. And I very much appreciate that you all appreciate what we're doing here, what we're trying to do here, and which is elevate the level of discussion around RPGs. So thank you so much. Yeah, GM Scott, this is a cyst popper for sure. This book is unbelievable. It's too massive. Okay, it's just too big. Let's just call it what it is. Nobody is ever going to play this. You know, nobody's ever. It's just too thick. It's just massive. This takes the characters from level 7 all the way to level 20 or above. After 8 years in development, it is the wait is over. This brings 14 full adventure modules, more than 80 maps, and hundreds of encounters into one. By the way, classic Necromancer game style. It ends with an obituaries page. Oh, nope. It ends with several obituary pages for you to fill up. GM, no, this one comes in just under 1,000 pages. It is loaded with maps over maps over maps over maps over maps. It is just going on and on and on and on. And This thing is unbelievably huge with all sorts of crazy monsters, cool art, and it's a Necromancer Games module, so there's a lot of just like, hey, this thing is a death trap and it's going to kill you, or hey, like this level has really hard monsters on it because that's what is here, right? You're playing around, you're like, oh, okay, here's a, let me give you an example. Randomly here, this is an area called the Feet of Orcus. I think it's a big statue. You have, in encounter 21, you have a level 6, a challenge rating 6 encounter. Then you have a challenge rating 11 encounter. Then there's a dining room with no encounter. And then there's the Chamber of the Deathbringers, which is a CR 17. So within 4 encounters of one another, you have a CR 17, a CR 11, and a CR 6. And like that is the kind of style of play that, and there's a CR 20. So again, it is a thick, huge, massive book. I'm convinced that you could play this for the better part of a decade and probably never get through it. So, and it's just a prequel. It's a prequel to what eventually happens. These Orcus cultists eventually leave here and they go and make Rapana Thuk. So this is, if you finish this for some odd reason, you could skip forward on, 150 years and go play Rapana Thuk. I just don't see how you could ever fit, look at that. It's massive. All right. And it was $150. I had to buy it. I mean, wife is hangry. That's not great, Casey. You need to work on that. Let's see. Dan says, I'm watching your Burning Wheel portion right now. One thing that I feel a lot of people don't clue into is that for the most part, the subsystems are not designed to be used initially. I agree with you, Dan. And I do. I mean, Luke Crane, you don't need to clue on that. I mean, Luke Crane is very specific about it. He said, these are optional modules, what is it? Duel of Wits, range and cover, whatever, steel, like that. Those are all optional modules. You can just use the basic, make a test, what's the ob, make the test. Like you can use that to basically revolve anything in the entire game. So I do agree with you. I think it is smart. Grade. This is not nearly, it's not nearly as, this is just almost unusable. Can we be honest with ourselves here? Come on. No one's ever going to play this. How would I even use this book at the table? I don't even know how I would, there's so much here. I don't even know how you grade this. My guess is it's probably a C is what I'm going to have to guess. I'd like to think that if you're designing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of encounters, that they're all going to be top notch. But the truth of the matter is there's probably some things here where they just, shipped it and telephoned it in because they're like, fuck, it's a 1,000-page book. No one's going to notice. So yeah, I'm going to say it's like a C, probably. Maybe it's B, but this, you know what? I'm going to say it's a C+. And if you like the size, you could take it up to a B. And if you don't like it, you could take it down. Yes, Enders, GM Scott was quick to point out that we could use that for the cyst. B for big. Oh, good old Pathfinder first edition book. This is the Monster Codex. This book kind of sucked, I think. Oh no. I love this book. Never mind. This was I thought this was a different book. This book was Pathfinder doing what 4th edition had already been doing for years, which was great. They kind of 4th editionified the monsters here. So you would get here's a section on ghouls, and they give you a whole section on ghouls, about the information. Instead of printing ghoul information 25 times, they give you some ghoul spells, some ghoul feats so that you can make ghouls kind of cool. And then what they do is they give you basically the 4th edition version of different monsters that are all ghouls. Here's a ghoul creeper, which is a rogue. Here's a ghoul stalker, which is a higher level rogue. Here's a ghoul huntsmaster, who is a ranger. Here's a masked murderer, who is a ghoul bar dirge 8. A ghoul commander, which is a ghoul anti-paladin level 7. It was just, if you wanted to make a cool ghoul themed adventure, you could just go to this ghoul section and just pull out all these cool ghoul monsters. And within 5 to 10 pages, you had a bunch of different monsters. So you just weren't using the same troll, ogre, all the time. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Azazel226 says, this sucks. No, wait. I love this. AKA the Pathfinder experience. That's perfect. And thank you for completing our super chat. Thank you, Goal. Thank you, Azazel. That's very nice of you. Azazel, you know what? You're not wrong. That is like, no, because you know what? Like, Frostjack, it's like a lot of times you're like, oh man, these rules are so complex. It's so tedious and boring, and then you end up having a great time and a great session. Granted, yes, it can happen the opposite way sometimes, where you go, I'm loving. Oh no, wait, this sucks. Anyways, this was a really cool book. I liked this book a lot. This was actually a monster book that I really, really liked. I thought this was something different. This book was great. This is everything that I want in a monster book. This is what 4th edition did with their later monster manual books. This is how everything should be. I did think this was the NPC Codex. That is 100% what I thought this was. Yes, which I do not like. Spoiler alert. All right, so cool. Another 4E book. It's the Draconomicon Chromatic Dragon Edition. And again, if we're showing a lot of 4E books, it's because Mr. William Brandis's wife just requested it. It means so much to her health and recovery, and we respect that. Draconomicon 4th edition, they split it into 2 different books. They did one for Metallics. They did one for Chromatics, maybe to sell more books. I don't know. It's a lot of fluff. Information about their life cycle, the lore of the dragons, their language, their society. But, where does their breath weapon come from? What organ produces it? Now, there is a Draconomicon for 3rd edition, which is gorgeous and beautiful, and Todd Lockwood did all the art for it, and it's absolutely a breathtaking book. The 4th edition kind of copied some of that, but it did include all the same kind of life cycle information, which is just total crap. It's just total FBT. It doesn't serve any purpose, but it's fun sometimes if you're into that sort of thing. But what it does give us is ways to use dragons, particularly chromatic evil dragons, in 4th edition. It tells us about different colors of dragons, how to run a draconic campaign at the heroic tier, levels 1 through 10, at paragon tier, at epic tier. And again, it gives us several different sort of templates for those campaigns. Here's a campaign where you're dragon slayers, right? And this is kind of the idea of how your entire campaign might be based around the idea that you are dragon slayers. And here's how you would use the tiers to sort of highlight that. Here's another concept for a campaign where you're actually servants of a dragon or of a dragon society, which again, I think is really, really awesome as well. They gave us cool options and lots of information on dragon hordes, which is really, really cool. There weren't a lot of random magical item tables in 4th edition, so it was actually kind of cool that they put one in here. There's some cool artifacts, and artifacts were really cool in 4th edition. Here's some more information about famous dragons throughout D&D's history. And then, of course, because it's 4th edition, there's a lot of information here for, plug and play. There's monsters, there's maps, there's encounters, there's different mini adventures, mini dungeons, mini delves, and they've got a bunch of them. The fact that the whole last half of the book is all a bunch of different dragon layers and how you can use them as sort of mini adventures. And then I believe it ends with some new monsters, like the brown dragon, known for looking and smelling like shit. No, I'm just kidding. All right, chat, see if you get it right. In 4th edition, what is a brown dragon's breath weapon? See if anybody in chat can get it without looking it up, obviously. I mean, you can look it up, but if you look it up, you're a loser. So, anybody? Dan says poison. No, Dan, you are wrong. Brutus says bludgeoning. They technically did not have wet blood damage type. No, it is Sand. Brown dragons are also known as sand dragons. They breathe a blast of swirling, pelting sand. Ooh, wow. Anyways, they also had the purple dragon. That's pretty cool. Psychic damage. Look at that. Cool art. Anyways, it's just a solid, fantastic book. Useful if you want to focus on dragons in your campaign. And if you, that's what, again, these books are designed to be like this plug and play experience where you go, hey, I want to do a campaign in 4th edition and I really want to focus on dragons. I'm going to pick up this book, and A to Z, cover to cover, this book has information for somebody who's interested in not only learning about dragons, but using them in a D&D game. And for that purpose, like you got to give this thing credit. It's a B. It's just solidly designed and well executed. The art is also very beautiful. I think they did a great job with 4E art. I don't even know what this is. I think I got this off of a Kickstarter. It's by Michael Curtis, who did, I think, Stonehell Dungeon. Set a date for adventure with the Adventurer's Almanac. An entire year's worth of adventure waits you inside its pages, complete with magical items, interesting personalities, strange festivals, and dangerous sights to explore, all presented in a system-neutral format suitable for any fantasy game. All right. I don't know that if I've ever opened this book. I have no idea what this is. It's a lot of writing. Here's apparently a whole calendar of events, a random festival generator table. Here are some interesting events that will happen in this month. I don't know. This book looks like horrible. It's just got a ton of there's no random. It's just random. It's like a random calendar generator. It's just like one big calendar. I don't know. I hesitate to call this book an F, but it just doesn't seem like there's. I don't know. It's kind of crap. It's just, again, this is that kind of 3E era where they would just publish shit and just everybody would buy it. So, all right. F. I'm going to give it an F. Sorry, Michael Curtis. Do I remember why I bought it? Yeah, probably because I read the back of it, Frostjack, and I probably believed it. I was like, oh, I love, like, Tome adventure design and, things that really help me, I had money and they were selling it. I mean, that is ultimately the real answer. There was a time in our life where Smith and I would go to Gen Con and we'd be mad that there wasn't more books for us to buy. We're like, we came here with money. We want to buy more books. Why aren't you selling more books? This is my second copy of Pathfinder Mythic Adventures. I own it several times. This was still sweet. All right. Damien, at the beginning of our show, tipped $5, and he wanted me to talk about Mutants Masterminds 2nd edition and why I thought it was greater than Mutants Masterminds 3rd edition. This is Mutants Masterminds 2nd edition, and yes, it is beat to the ever-lifting shit out of it. This book has been through a lot, and this is taking the 3rd edition D20 game engine, Strength, Dex, Con, Int, Wiz, Charisma, Fort save, Reflex save, Will save, feats, skills, but doing it for superheroes. The only thing that it adds to the game system is a very large, comprehensive section of different powers, right? So you have, regeneration and radiation control and quickness and obscure and paralyze and nauseate and all this other stuff. And you use those points to, you're depending on what kind of superhero campaign you were going to do. You could have 100 points, you might have 150 points, and you would build out your superhero with it, and you would create a really, really cool superhero. And it was very nitty gritty. It was very, if you had this many ranks in flight, you flew this fast. If you had one more rank in flight, you flew that much faster, right? It even kind of still used grid-based stuff like third edition, right? Like if you had a blast, it was in, it's like a fireball radius. So there was kind of an element of like, are we supposed to be using grids with this? But our speedster moves 5,000 feet around. Ultimately, what I liked about second edition Mutants Masterminds better was two things. One, they introduced the idea of, first edition introduced the idea of the hero point, but second edition really sold me on the hero point concept, because the idea of Mutants Masterminds is you have these hero points that you can use to not only re-roll a d20, but to do a variety of things. And this game really changed my perspective on sort of narrative gameplay and how that works. Let me look it up here. Here we go. Earning and using, page 121. This is important for people to understand. Okay. So the first thing I want to kind of point out here is the distinguishing here. The game had something in number 1 called extra effort. And extra effort was a way for your character, even if they didn't have hero points, they could push their character a little bit stronger, a little bit farther, a little bit faster. Your character would start to take damage and become fatigued. You could even push yourself into unconsciousness through extra effort. But extra effort allowed your character to sort of do the mighty and the impossible at a cost. But hero points let you do kind of crazy, broken, heroic things. You could re-roll a d20, and again, it's basically rolling a d10 plus 20, d10 plus 10. But you could also do things like instantaneously counter a power. So even if it's not your turn and somebody's like throwing a massive fire blast at you, you could use your water and you could counter it. You could, if you would become fatigued and start to get taken out, you could use your hero points for it. Okay? But the coolest part, what changed the game for me, was you could use a hero point to escape death, and not like in a you stabilize way, but like in a way where if your character would be dead, you could somehow figure out a way to sort of escape it. But you could also do things like this. This inspiration concept is what allowed players to sort of kind of basically say, hey, how about my character realizes that if he electrifies the bridge, that'll create a magnetic field, which will shut down all the robots. And you go, yeah, that sounds cool. I'm going to allow you to sort of, as a player, take control of the game. So this is why Mutants Masterminds was such a huge inspiration for us and why it shaped it. Now, why do I like this over third edition? Because in third edition, I don't, the quick and short of it, I'm not going to get into the detail of it. I do not like how afflictions work and how so many powers in third edition are essentially just the affliction power. And I don't like the way that affliction has the 3 different levels, of if they fail by 5 or more, if they fail by 10 or more, all the afflictions work the same way. I don't like how everything just defaults to affliction in the third edition rule set. I'm getting very complicated, but Mutants Masterminds, it was a legendary game for me. It is now when I look at it, it feels a little clunky. It feels a little bit, accounting, right? Like you're picking over PowerPoints and stuff like that. I cannot give it an S tier. Even though I love this game, like in my heart it is, and the memories that I have from this game are like S+++ tier. But for me personally, this is it's an A tier game. It's a lot of fun and it's a great introduction. If you like D20 and you want to get into superheroes and some of the other super narrative stuff seems like a bridge too far, check out Mutants Masterminds. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. But this game is shit. All the games that Marvel has tried to come out with, except for the original Marvel RPG, the Face Rip game. This was created by Margaret Weiss. They tried to use the Cortex engine, and they created an absolute garbage game. This game didn't even have rules in it for making your own hero. That's right. I'm going to say that again. This superhero game didn't have rules in it for making your own hero. It was only so you could play as the actual Marvel characters. This is the biggest F of. Also, the game is kind of shit. I'm also not going to lie. There are some cool ideas in here, but they're executed very badly. You know, some of this stuff I think maybe even made it into Sentinels of the Multiverse, but in a better way. Like in this game, you build up a dice pool when you're going to make an attempt at an action, and each hero starts off with either a D6 or a D8 or a D10, and it's either solo, buddy, so like one on what, you know, you and a buddy, or you and a team. And so like some characters are better off in a team, and some characters are better off with a buddy, and some characters are better off solo. And like the game represents that, like Daredevil, if he's by himself, starts with a D10 in his pool, and if he's on a team, it's a D6 because he sucks. But like Cyclops is a D10 when he's in a team, and he's only a D6 when he's in a solo. So it's kind of a cool idea. That part of the idea was cool. But yeah, like, anyways, swing and a miss. I haven't liked almost any of the Marvel games, and I've been really unimpressed with a lot of the Margaret Weis productions. Cortex isn't my favorite game system in the world, and this game is not it. Sorry. F. Casey, in the vein of game was good but can't justify a high score because modern systems do it better. What game has dropped off the most for you? This is going to be very controversial. I wonder if people can guess what it is. I'm going to do here. I am holding the book in my hand. Okay. It's right here. It's right here. I want people to guess what my answer to KC is going to be. I'm just curious if people will guess. I'll give you a few moments. I gotta drink something. If you pay attention to this channel a lot, you might actually get what it is. Dungeon World. Good job, James Scott. Good job, William Brandis. Yeah, Dungeon World. I mean, the game that launched 1,000 ships. You know, I don't think. I mean, Apocalypse World is what started it, but I don't think if this game hadn't been made, I don't think Powered by the Apocalypse would be something. I mean, even though it was based off of Apocalypse World, Dungeon World, in my personal opinion, put Powered by the Apocalypse on the map. And I love this game, and I've played the shit out of this game. I really have. In fact, it's hard for me sometimes when I play Powered by the Apocalypse games to not call things like Defy Danger and Hack and Slash and, you know, recall Spout Lore or, you know, Discern Realities. Like, it's just what I naturally call it. But PBTA Tech has come so far, and when they made this game, they weren't trying to be revolutionary. They were trying to basically say, hey, look, you know, now, great, listen, I still think this is a fantastic game, and I think it's worth playing. And I think it is a fantastic bridge between the old, and by that I mean like D20 based fantasy, and the new. And by that I mean Powered by the Apocalypse and all this sort of narrative games. It is a wonderful, beautiful bridge between the two of them. And I would highly encourage everyone to read this book. The principles of how to run a game and how the agendas of Dungeon World are beautiful and apply to every game. And we've done entire streams about this. But when I sit down to play Dungeon World now, or you know, think about playing Dungeon World now, I feel frustrated because there are modern versions that I've played this game a lot. I don't need this bridge. And there are modern games that I'm just like, wow, that is doing what I want it to do. A lot better than what Dungeon World is doing. Dungeon World is still trying to keep one foot firmly in the world of D&D. It's trying to keep one foot in the world of hit points and weapon damage rolls, and oh, your sword is bigger than my sword, so your sword does more damage. It's still very much trying to be like, this is a D&D game. And I don't want or need a game to do that. I'd rather this game do what it can do better. And so that's why I get frustrated with it. And that's my main takeaway. That being said, I am going to give, this is how much I like Dungeon World. I give this game S tier. But in terms of where it used to be, when this game came out and I started playing it at like Indie Games on Demand at Gen Con, and I brought it home to my group and they all looked at me like I was crazy and they didn't want to play it, I was like, okay. I mean, I thought this game was so incredible, and it was, and it is, but we've learned a lot in the 10 or whatever, 15 years since this game has come out. And now I look at games that I think are they're just better. Brandon says, Derek was kind of sad when I got into this like 2 years ago because it was like 10 years too late for him. Yes, that is correct. That being said, I still love playing Dungeon World. Although I do think there are some good hacks out there like Homebrew World, Freebooters on the Frontier, Minus World, Vagabonds of Dyfed. Like, I think that do kind of the format here better, you know? If they ever did a Dungeon World second edition, if they did it correctly though, Damien, like, and actually tried to update it to modern day standards, yeah, I would agree. It would be a day one Kickstarter for me as well. Sean, welcome Sean. Sean says, if you go into Dungeon World wanting a good PBTA game, I think you'll be disappointed. If you go into it wanting a good D&D game, I think you'll have fun. Sean, you're strong, my friend. That is probably the best way that I could describe it, because if you're trying to make this into like the PBTA narrative experience, you're going to feel very frustrated by the lack of mechanics in here that tie into this. But if you want to have a D&D, if you want to have a classic D&D experience, fuck D&D. Don't play D&D. Play Dungeon World, and you'll be like, oh my God, this is what I wanted out of D&D this whole time. This is what I wanted my D&D game to be like. This is what I wanted my D&D game to feel like. And it will deliver very well. So it has fallen considerably, but S tier. So there we go. Yeah. Oh, absolutely, KC. If D&D the movie, forget playing D&D. Run Dungeon World instead, or Fate. Like, it'll work way, way, way better. You know what? Smith gave us that big tip, or I should say Smith's wife gave us that big tip. So we started, or tonight, well, not started, but we did the first edition DMG early. So let's talk about the 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Beautiful cover. All the 4th edition books are beautiful. I'm not going to lie, people. This is probably, to me, the only Dungeon Master Guide. Oh, that's true. She is a Smith, too. I didn't think about that. All right, I'm going to say something here. It's going to sound crazy. 1st edition D&D is the GOAT. 1st edition DMG is the GOAT. No doubt about it. We can all agree. But this is the best Dungeon Master Guide. It really is. It's a fantastic book. It really teaches everything about how to be a dungeon master. This book is it is a course on how to be a dungeon master. And it's not just about how to fucking balance its CR challenge rating, okay? It starts with a 30-page section on how to run the game. It talks about what motivations your players are going to have. Do they like to act? Do they like to instigate and stir shit up? Are they power gamers? Are they storytellers? Right? It is a fantastic game, or a fantastic book. It talks about your style as a dungeon master. It talks about how to make rules at the table and how you can change the game and why you should change rules and why you shouldn't change rules. What are your procedures on rolling dice? If you had never played Dungeons and Dragons before, this book is going to teach you how to do it, how to prepare. Okay? Rules of thumb, advice on how to run a game, how to get started. What about props? How to work on your narration, how to talk about suspense and enticement and role-playing. This stuff seems crazy, right? None of this has anything to do with the rules of the game, but it has everything to do with being a dungeon master. And so this book is not afraid to go that place, okay? How to improvise and pacing. And it's just like really, really, really Good. Now, then it talks about combat encounters. Not in the player's handbook, in the Dungeon Master Guide. And it's not just like how to balance them. No. This talks about how to run a good combat. What makes an interesting combat? How do you actually go through the process of rolling it? And what are some of the things that you should be doing to make your combats exciting? How you can use the rules to adjudicate different actions. How to build interesting encounters. How to use the roles and the terrain. How to use controllers and lurkers and minions and elites and soldiers to create interesting concepts and interesting ideas. Here are a bunch of templates that you can use in order to sort of create quick and easy combat encounters. Look at all the different ways to use terrain. I talk about this all the time on Night School. Difficult terrain, blocking terrain, challenging terrain, hindering terrain, obscuring terrain, and cover terrain. Cover terrain. How terrain interacts with the different types of monsters. And it's all laid out in a very beautiful, easy to follow way. Because remember, in 4th edition, the player's handbook had all the magic items. So this DMG doesn't have all that much about that. Then it talks about skill challenges. It talks about how to use published adventures. This book is a clinic on how to run a D&D game. Yes, it has elements in it that are tied specifically to 4th edition, but it actually teaches you how to play D&D and how to run a game. And so I think it's fantastic. James Wyatt's a great author. And yeah, let's see what I have. Let's see what I have bookmarked here. Oh, there we go. Creating monsters, the quick shorthand. All this math would later be updated in a later book. You could argue that's one of the biggest problems with 4th edition, or arguably maybe one of its greatest strengths, is they did learn from their mistakes and they made changes. No, it was just the creating monsters. No, see all these red marks here? These red ones? There we go. There's all the red ones. That's page 42. Page 42 is basically just sort of like if you wanted to use DCs by level, damage by level, that was on page 42. You know, the answer to life, the universe, and everything. All right, let's do some, I'm going to do some quick hits here. Arcane Power had information about bards, sorcerers, warlocks, and witches. It's a splat book. It's full of different options for 4th edition. They made about 1 million of these, and they made one for martial characters, arcane characters, divine characters, primal characters. They actually made 2 for martial characters. This one I want to say had some okay options, some little bit of powerful stuff in here, stuff for bards, sorcerers, sword mages, some new feats, some new epic destinies. Nothing. All of these are basically just kind of the same. They're just splat books. Like, you didn't need these at all. I mean, there's enough stuff in the core class that you could play forever. But you know, I'm so torn about stuff like this because, you know, people love books like this, and who doesn't love seeing new abilities and new feats and new powers that you can take? And it can be a lot of interesting things, but for the most part, this stuff never excites me as other stuff in the game series. But you know, if you're a player and you want new fun powers to choose from for your character as you level up, you know, this is a great book. My main problem with this is, like, these books come out when you're in the middle of a campaign, and then you get like these new builds, and you're like, oh, I would rather be that build. I'd rather be the prescient bard, but like, it just came out. That being said, you know, they did one for each of the archetypes. You know, just the core book maybe only had 3 or 4 powers per level. This probably doubled it to like 8 or 9 powers per level. So you had a lot of choice to choose from, and I can't fault them for that. So Arcane Power is going to get a B- for me. I don't recall anything in here being particularly like blowing me away, but it was pretty cool. Like, at the end of the day, it's just a splat book. So I'm going to treat it like that. Damien comes in with $1.99. You should do OSD. I don't like whatchamacallit. I can't reach it. It's all the way over there. I'll get when people give me the tips to go do a particular game, that's annoying because then I got to go find it. I mean, you're paying me money, so I'm going to go look for it. I mean, I know where it is, but. All right. This is Old School Essentials, which is a reprint, functionally, of BX D&D. It is divided into 5 books. This book is just for making characters. That thin. It's very small. This book is just for your magical spells. This is about running adventures in Old School Essentials. Here's your monsters. And here is your treasures. This is, again, BX D&D. I'm not going to treat it like it's some revolutionary thing. It's not. They made very few changes to the game. It is basically just taking the work of Moldvay and Cook and reprinting it. But I gave shit to Swords and Wizardry for just being a carbon copy of an existing game. It was basically just, taking zeroth edition D&D and just shoving it into a book. But what Old School Essentials did is they made it very clean, very nice formatting. They cleaned up the language. They made it very easy to read, very nice formatting, very, very, very concise, clear steps and processes with, good formatting, good titles, good headers. And that makes it infinitely more easy to use. Now, how do I feel about Old School Essentials? Which is basically saying, how do I feel about BX D&D? Number one, I love the art. Whatever this style of art is, I am fucking in for it. That is so cool to me. Love it. Look at this. That's what I want my D&D campaign. I want every D&D campaign I play to basically look like that. Like that is so cool. Also very cool. I like BX, but I like Old School Essentials. It's very cleaned up. It's a beautiful edition. They did a good job with it. But I'm not gonna lie to you. When I start playing BX D&D, I get bored. I have fun for a while, and which is fine. That's what the games are for. But then it's like suddenly you find yourself being like, yeah, I guess I don't really get a whole lot of stuff for leveling up. And, at a certain point, like the mechanics for the game feel pretty lightweight. And I appreciate that they're not slowing us down, but there's also not a whole lot for me to dig into. And I feel like it's a little too lightweight for me. Again, these are my personal opinions on these games. Old School Essentials is a beautiful redoing of a classic game. They did a great service by making it pretty and beautiful and organized, and they've changed the formatting and fixed the layout. They did a great job with it. But would I want to play Old School Essentials? No. If we went to NightCon and we had a fun, like 1 night, 2 night, maybe even like a weekend where it's like, we're going to run Old School Essentials all weekend. That would be fun. I would do that. But I don't really like one-shots. So it's hard for me to really recommend the game. So I'm going to give Old School Essentials a B minus. Again, it is just a reprint. It's done very well. It's beautiful. I mean, you should pick this. If you don't own like BX D&D, you could be like cool and pick up BX D&D, but you should probably just pick up this. It's actually beautiful. And it's a lot easier to use. It's easier to read, but it just doesn't keep my attention the way that other RPG systems do. If that makes sense. Yeah, it was a tough day when Derek and I had to admit BX was boring. That is very true. That was a tough day. That was a tough day. What do we got here? It's almost 9 o'clock, so we got time for a couple more. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Hoard of the Dragon Queen, which was one of their first adventures that came out for 5th edition. And people say that they hate this adventure, and they say it is horrible and it's hard to run. I have read through this adventure, and you know what? I kind of like it. It's got a lot of text in it. There's, compared to our old games of running things. Now, it's even... You know what I like about it? It kind of is just like, here's a location, here's a bunch of stuff in it. It doesn't really tell you anything about what you need to do or how you're supposed to do it or even what you're kind of supposed to be doing, which I guess is probably why everybody hates it. But I actually thought it was kind of charming. In its own way. So yeah, I had no problems with this. Gabe says, I have a friend that ran that. He hates it with all of his heart. Now, Gabe, do you know why, Gabe, that he hates it with all of his heart? It's an old school module, not hand-holding AP. Yeah, it is very old school. It's definitely got new school elements, right? There's a lot of, we've got description tasks and there's a lot of, stuff, but it doesn't have all like the constant backstories that so many of these modern games do. And again, I can't say I haven't read this. I haven't played this. I've read it. It's actually one of the few 5th edition adventures I have read, just because it came out when it was still so new. He said it's linear. You only fight the same kind of creatures. Encounters are unbalanced. Hooks are weak or nonsensical. And that's probably true. Except, see, I think that's part of the issue. I don't care if the encounters are unbalanced. That doesn't bother me. If the hooks are weak or nonsensical, also doesn't bother me. A lot of times, just, there's a dragon horde. That's enough for me to be like, yeah, that's a place I would want to go adventure. And that's a place I would want to go. I don't need any other sort of motivation other than that. I'm playing D&D, right? Isn't that what we do in a D&D game, is go adventure and kick ass and take names? I'm not saying your friend's wrong, Gabe. I'm just saying, I get why they think that, and I certainly empathize with them. But for me personally, yeah, I mean, I thought it was fine. You got bored pretty easily, Horit. 5e is in. Look I just ran a 5e campaign last year, and I still don't know any of the balance rules. I never even bothered to learn them. I didn't care. There's 20 ghouls. But what's the challenge rating of that? Your party's only level 3. I don't know. I don't care. Who cares? Well, what if they all die? Then they should have run away. I don't know. Again, I was playing adventures where, like Rapana Thuk, where a CR17 encounter is on level 1 of the dungeon. All right? Like, have a sense of perspective. Now, I know you're thinking, like, but what about the narrative game? D&D is not a narrative game. Pathfinder is not a narrative game. We have other games that are narrative games. So, yeah, why would my married farmer with 3 kids go adventure? I don't know. Figure the fuck out. Sounds like you're just a bad player. You probably should have made a better character. Maybe you know what? Maybe he was a married farmer with 3 kids. And then they all got killed by gnolls, okay? And now he doesn't care if he lives or dies. The only thing that satisfies him is the glint of gold and the hope at one day that maybe he'll figure out why he was spared his life. And also, he also hates gnolls with a vengeance. You know what? That, boom, there, you're done. The This is not an RPG book, but it's on my shelf. This is Lord of the Rings, Return of the King strategy battle game, released when the movies were coming out in the early 2000s by Games Workshop. This was a kind of quasi-skirmish size, quasi-Warhammer size game. Return of the King really took up the scale of the game to have bigger and larger units. This game is fantastic. I love Warhammer, the original Warhammer. I don't like Age of Sigmar at all. But this game was awesome. They made the heroes feel like badass heroes with their might points and their will points and their fate points. They actually felt like really, really cool. No, it is not Warhammer with a Lord of the Rings skin. It's its own system completely. They don't have weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, wounds. Like, they have their own stat profile. It works differently. But it's a great book, and I really like it. And it was a really fun miniatures game, but I just never really had anybody to play it with, so I never really got super into it. But anyways, good stuff. How about a little second edition black box or black border? These came out near the end of AD&D second edition. There was a bunch of player option series. Most people know very famously there's 2 books that were part of the players option series, one called Skills and Powers, the other one famously Combat and Tactics, but which is what our show series is named after. So this was sort of a kind of a quasi revision of second edition D&D, but not in the way that we think of it today. But this was a book that came out as a Dungeon Master's options for high level campaigns. And what this book tried to do was bring back some of the elements that were part of classic D&D into AD&D second edition. And this whole book was about how to challenge high-level characters and ways that, didn't seem completely unfair. It had information about creating magical items. It had information about politics and kingdoms. But for the most part, this book was a disappointment. While it had some good advice, it honestly, I think, fell short. Even back then, it had a lot of information about kind of ways to basically say, oh, your party can teleport. Here are ways to fuck them over by not letting them teleport. The advice wasn't really that great. They had these magical duels, but that didn't feel particularly high level. And then they tried to introduce these things called true dreamers, which were like super powerful magic that like high level wizards could cast kind of like a la carte. Like it didn't rely on spell slots or like a pre-existing formula, but it was so complicated to use and so difficult to create. It cost like tens of thousands of gold and like hundreds of days to like cast one spell. It was kind of rituals, but done very badly. I mean, there's elements here which I think were okay, but ultimately I thought this book kind of sucked. F. Sorry, Skip Williams. All right, it's 9 o'clock. How about let's do 2 more. Here is a 3rd edition source book that was kind of, I don't know that they did anything else in this series. They called this a campaign option book. This was by 2 of my favorite designers of all time, Monty Cook, Sean K. Reynolds. And this book was the way that I use this book actually as an example of why I hate the way Pathfinder 2 players use the Book of the Dead. This book, it's not a campaign. It is it's a whole addition to a campaign. It describes and details a city called Manifest. And in the city of Manifest, the boundary between the living and the dead is very thin. And you can essentially be ghost PCs in this sort of, it's like a campaign archetype, Brutus. And instead of like people just being like, oh yeah, we're making characters for our Pathfinder 2 campaign. It's like, I'm going to be a zombie just cuz. Or it's like, oh, my character died. Suggestions? You could just come back as a skeleton. I hate those types of characters and those types of ideas, because it's like that just comes out of nowhere and it feels completely inappropriate. It has no connection or tie into the game. Ghostwalk describes the city of Manifest, and it really talks about an entire society or culture or world that is integrated with this idea that in this particular place, you know, ghosts can become real and people can become ghosts. It's kind of like a crossing over place. And it's just a really interesting idea. Now, it even has elements, I think, that maybe John Harper used to be inspired when he created Duskwall for Blades in the Dark. I thought this book was really well done. It's 3rd edition, so of course it's got shitloads of, you know, feats and prestige classes and spells in it, because why wouldn't it? And reused art, which is another 3rd edition problem. But and probably most of these feats are garbage. But it was a cool idea, and I applauded it. And again, it kind of reminds me of Vor Rakoth, which we did in our first series for 4th edition. But I thought this was an interesting idea, and I would have liked to seen more of it. But I'm going to give Ghostwalk a C. All right, last book. All right, we'll end with this one. Pathfinder Playtest. Also known as the Superior Edition. This, you know, the more that we delve into Pathfinder 2, and the more I look at some of the changes that were in the beta, the more I'm like, I kind of like the beta better. I like resonance. I like the way that the proficiency systems worked. I like the way that the original kind of, some of the ways that some of the scaling worked differently. In many ways, this was a better game than Pathfinder 2nd Edition. They released this, and you know, another way to think of it is this. This is the game that they wanted to release, right? Think about it that way. This is the game that they thought was what they want. This is what they wanted. The feedback from the playtest was what the audience wanted. And we should know this from Steve Jobs, right? The audience doesn't fucking know what they want. All right? Frostjack, I completely agree with you. Thoughts on playtesting in general? I'm starting to feel like it just turns into design by committee. Exactly. We've talked about this on a past stream, Frostjack, about how there is something, you know, whether it's a movie or a book, when you get something that has 7 directors and 1 million executive producers and 22 contributing authors, it loses focus, it loses direction. Playtesting is that on a massive epic scale. And boy, oh boy, do we know that Paizo, you know, got kind of lambasted about some of their decisions here. And they went back on a lot of these revolutionary ideas. And we kind of got this more traditional elements of RPG in some places in Pathfinder 2 final release. But this beta edition, I mean, people like to shit on Resonance, but if you've played Pathfinder 2 and you've really played it, like, you know that magical items are kind of an issue. Resonance solves so much of these issues. In many ways, this obviously probably had some elements that weren't completely finished and baked. But I'll tell you, it really, and like Resonance plus Alchemist doesn't really make a lot of sense either. So that's totally fine. Like, you could have fixed that. But like removing the elements that they did, I would have loved to seen a Pathfinder where proficiency was 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 2, 4, 6, 8. I would have loved to seen a Pathfinder with resonance. And there's also a couple other minor tweaks and changes and stuff like that in this book that I think make a big difference. But yeah, I liked the playtest a lot. I thought it was a very bold direction. And you know what? Any company that has the balls to charge $30 for what they are basically calling an incomplete playtest so that you can do their work for them to QA it, that is a capitalistic that is one of the most capitalistic companies I've ever heard of in my entire life. That is a bold decision to ask somebody. Yeah. Hey, we're gonna let you check this game out for $30. It's very crazy. GM Scott says this is the Model T. We got a faster horse. Exactly, GM Scott. Damien says the game before they listen to the loud assholes on the forums. KC, screw the terrible DMs that push back on resonance. William Brandis, resonance fixes so many things. Yeah, exactly. Playtesting is good for bug hunting, or editing mistakes, right? Oh, you misspelled a word or you used the wrong to there. Yeah, it's not good for design. Exactly, Brutus. Exactly. Exactly. Yes. The finished product, not the draft. Casey says this is why the whole one D&D thing is such a joke. Why are they asking the community for input? Exactly. Derek doesn't play video games, so he doesn't know that this is now standard fare. What, paying to playtest a game? Oh, I do not know that. How many of you bought BG3 5 years ago? Yeah. So yeah, it's I thought this book was great. I thought it had a lot of great ideas. I still believe in Pathfinder 2. I still believe in the core engine. I think it's a great game with a lot of solid components. I just think that they went far enough in this version, and then they took some steps back from the edge. And I think the final release of the game has some endemic flaws because of that, you know. So I am going to give the playtest I'm going to give it like an A-. I think it was a really well visioned and executed game system. Obviously, it didn't have a ton of information in it because it was just the playtest. But, you know, I thought it was done well. So, A-, maybe B+, something right in there. I could be, you know, I could be tempted for either one. And again, you know what? I'm going to give it the A- just because they charged $30 for it. You sons of bitches. You got me. You got me so good. All right. Well, that brings us to 9:15. And that is going to bring us to the end of our Thursday stream. But thank you to everybody. And we had a lot of people tonight who came out and supported us, not only for our super chats to release our next combat and tactics video, which we will be doing. Thank you to everybody who supported us there. And then, but also to all of the people who donated tonight and got us over that $125 stream goal. I am going to be back Sunday. We are going to do a system deep dive, and our champions and heroes on the Patreon are going to be voting to decide what that is going to be. And we still have to hear from Darth Gorlock about what he wants on his Tuesday stream next week. So very excited for that. We are making a good, healthy dent now. I would say about, a good like 25%. All right, maybe 20% of my books is now over here on the left-hand side. I'd say we got about 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe we got about 6, maybe 6 streams left of this. But we're making a dent. We'll get through it. I appreciate everybody's patience, and I hope you're having fun with this. Maybe we'll take a break. Maybe we'll get through 3 of these streams. We'll take a break. We'll do some other stuff. We'll come back to it. You know, so it doesn't get too old or something like that. We got time. We're going to be here. We've been here for almost 3 years, people. We're not going away. They tried to bring us down, but you all won't let them get us down. You all, the man wants to take us down, but you all said, fight the power, fuck the man. And that's why you're here. So appreciate that. Boothby says, take a break so I don't have to put my books back. That's true. All right. KC is giving us an update on the Hangry Wife. Says pizza is here in 5 minutes. I might be able to survive the night and be at the secret stream. The wife looks like she'll be able to make it another day or so. Thank you, Derek. Again, big thanks to Mr. Damian Williams for giving us a free Kingmaker giveaway. I'm speaking my truth to power. Thank you to Damian Williams for that. So brave. And thanks, congrats to Frostjack for winning that. So thank you for completing your bingo. Looks like a couple other people got some nice bingos too, but they weren't fast enough. So leave me a comment below. Again, I am going to try to either convince our buddy George to go through this and chapter it up again, because that was an incredibly generous thing. If not, I will try to go back through this quickly and throw in some chapter notes so that we can create a master index at the end. So if there's a game that you want me to talk about, you know which video to go to, which to reference. And if you pull up a video, you can quickly see these are the products or these are the books that I talked about today. So you can kind of quickly skip ahead to the one that you might be interested in. So I thought that was very useful. Go check out our past video if you want to see more of my book collection well indexed. So pending that, bear with us. All right. I'm about to head up to the studio. Assuming I'm going to talk to Mr. Ben here in a few seconds, but assuming he is still up for it, we're going to go do some audio tests and check some stuff at the studio. Casey, when on Sunday afternoon or evening? We'll ask the patrons, Casey, because I imagine that's mostly going to be it. I probably won't do it too early. It is Easter Sunday. Most people are going to be, having some sort of family or dinner or things like that. So probably maybe we could do like 5 o'clock or something, or 6 o'clock. We could do it a little bit earlier. So that might be a good example. I don't know. Again, we'll ask the patrons. Do it during church hours, right? Like I'm trying to avoid, or just during family hours. Even I'm going to go stop by my sister's house, see my nephews, see my parents. My mom and I have a couple cruise shore excursions that we needed to plan and decide for our upcoming cruise. So, it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks again to everybody for coming out tonight. Like I said, I'm going to go do some audio integration engineering with Ben up over at the studio. And assuming he's up for it. And then I will see you all Sunday when we will be doing some sort of deep dive into a system and really kind of picking over the nuts and bolts. I think it'll be a good, fun time. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and I will see you Sunday. I'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. See you on the Discord, everybody. Peace.